What's up guys, this is Sensei. Today's video I'm going to be showing you what I view to be the 3 different types of maps in Showdown, and I'm going to be telling you how to look for these types of maps and what brawlers are typically good on these types of maps. And of course, obviously each map has its own niche, right? Some brawlers can be better on some maps than others, but I think overall I think this is going to be pretty consistent. The brawlers that are good on these different map types are going to be pretty consistent throughout. But anyways, without further ado, let's hop right into the first map. Alright, so the first type of map coming up is going to be a tank map. And as the name suggests, these are showdown maps that are going to be really good for tanks. You're going to be seeing a lot of tanks on these types of maps. Just because they typically have a lot of walls, and it makes the map really close range, which makes it beneficial for tanks that can struggle against long-range brawlers. Just going to show you some examples here. Alright, here we have a rockwall ball, which is a great tank map that is currently in the meta, as you can see with all the walls. And then next we have erratic blocks, a map that is not in this meta, however, also a very good tank map as well. So as you can see, with all of the bushes and specifically the walls, like I said, makes maps close range, which is going to be very good for tanks. And yeah, you can pretty much push any tanks, and also even tank counters such as Shelly can be good on these maps as well. Let's move on to the second type of map in Brawl Stars. Alright, the next type of map that we have in the game is going to be the open map. And unlike the tank maps, these maps are going to have a lot of open space, a lot less walls, and a lot less grass, allowing your typical meta showdown brawlers to thrive, such as Pam, Carl, B, Max, etc. But also on the really open maps, even long-range brawlers such as Brock or Nani can even be pretty decent. As these maps tend to be really bad for tanks, just because there's really no cover. And so, unless you're playing maybe a BB, on a good modifier, you really probably shouldn't be playing tanks on these type of maps, and you should instead be playing the more ranged brawlers. So yeah, your typical meta brawlers, you're going to be seeing a lot of them here, like I said, but also the ranged brawlers, like I said before, like Nani and Brock, can be pretty decent on these types of maps. So let's just go over some examples real quick. Alright, so here you can see we have 2000 Lakes, one of the open maps we currently have in the meta. And then we have Dune Drift, one of the old maps that I also remember being pretty open. So as you can see, looking at these maps, you can just see all the open space there, and that allowed the more ranged brawlers, like 8-bit, to do well. And I think even after 8-bit's nerf, I think 8-bit would still do pretty well on these kinds of maps. Anyway, let's head into the last type of map, and then let's just go over some hybrid maps real quick. Alright, and for our final map type, we have what I like to call the bush maps. And basically, these are maps that have a lot of bush. We don't really have a lot of these kind of maps in the game. But yeah, basically, you're gonna have bush camping brawlers that are gonna be really good. So basically, Bull and Shelly are gonna be pretty decent, as they can kill anyone in the bush. And then you're gonna have brawlers that have vision advantage, aka Bow and sometimes Tara, are really gonna be dominant on these kind of maps. A very niche kind of map. We don't have a lot of these in the game, but when they do come in, typically they're going to be filled with bows and sometimes Tara. And if there's no bow and Tara, then the best option is going to be Shelly and Bull. And yeah, I'm just show you an example. We only have one of these maps currently in the game. However, I don't think it's ever going to come in rotation, maybe once in a while, but might as well show it. So here it is. As you can see, we have reverse cavern churn, the only map like this that we have in the game. However, it very rarely comes in rotation. And then we have Island Invasion, which I honestly don't remember much of, but as you can see, a lot of bush here, so I do think Bow would be good on here. So yeah, basically, if there is any Bow in the game, they're pretty much going to dominate. Second to that, maybe Tara as well with her gadget. But if there's no Bow and Tara, then the bush campers, Shelly and Bull, will be the best option, just because no one can beat without any super involved. No one's going to beat Bull in a close range 1v1 just because he does 2800 damage per attack and he just unleashes those super quick. And of course, as we know, Shelly with super can just completely body any brawler in the game. So that's the meta here. Yeah, now let's just talk about hybrid maps that kind of contain elements of both and what the meta kind of looks like on those kind of maps. Alright, so now we're going to be talking about hybrid maps, and these are maps that are going to have elements of at least 2 of the different types of maps that I discussed. So the first hybrid we're going to be talking about is a hybrid between a tank map and an open map. So these are going to be maps that are kind of open, but still do have some walls and stuff that tanks can use. So the resulting meta is that tanks are going to be slightly more viable on these maps because they're going to actually have some places that they can go and hide, and so they're not just completely out in the open all the time. And also the extremely long-range brawlers such as, you know, Brock, maybe a Nani, a Mr. P or something like that are not going to be as good as they are in just a straight open map, just because of those tanks that might appear, and also because they're not going to really be able to use their long range to the fullest potential. So yeah, but your typical meta brawlers are still going to be good on that map. So your B, your Max, your Carl, Pam, whatever, that was typically, you know, meta on the open range, they're still going to be as good as they were. So that's pretty much the changes there. Let's just go over an example real quick. All right, and the example that I have is safety center. As you can see in that middle area, can be pretty decent for tanks, especially BB. But there's still a lot of places that are open that tanks can still be vulnerable. And believe it or not, that was actually one of the best tank maps last meta. So you can see why last meta was pretty rough for tanks. But yeah, push BB on that map, but it did have the robot modifier, and we'll talk about how modifiers affect Showdown in another video. But yeah, alright, so the next hybrid that we are going to talk about is going to be the bush map with the open map, and we actually do have a map like that in the game, and I'll show that to you soon. But basically, all it's going to do is the meta is pretty much still going to be the same as it would be on open map, except that Bo and Tara are going to be more viable, and I guess your typical range brawler isn't going to be as viable just because it can be harder for them to check bush. The bush, I guess it can help tanks, but on this particular map, I don't think tanks were really like that viable since it was still a pretty open map. But yeah, it's just going to make Bo and Tara a lot better along with your typical meta. And I remember this map that I'm going to show you, Pam was still the #1 brawler in this map, but Bo did have a pretty decent win rate. So enough talking about it, let's just show you the map I'm talking about so you can get a better picture. Alright, so as you can see here, we have Eye of the Storm. And as you can see, we have that big bush over there in the top left of the map and on the bottom right of the map. And that is where Bo can really use his vision. But as you can see, for the most part, it's a pretty open map, and so that's why Pam was still pretty good. However, Bo did have a really decent win rate on this map, so that's what happens when you mix those two. And finally, we have the bush map with the tank map, and honestly, I don't think we have a map like that in the game. But if we did, I really don't think much would change. I think the meta would still be the same, just because, I mean, tanks are already decent on bush maps, and so adding walls, I don't think it's going to really make them more viable, if that makes sense. The tanks, you know, Bull and Shelly are still going to do Bull and Shelly things. Bo's still going to do Bo things. It's not really going to change much, in my opinion. But anyways, that is all the map types in the game, and that is all the hybrid map types in the game. And so now you know, whenever I refer to play this brawler on an open map or play this brawler on a tank map, now you know what I'm talking about when I say that. And yeah, now you also know what to look for when you're trying to push a brawler. If you're trying to push a tank, you could say like, is this a tank map? Does it have a lot of walls? Could I run tanks here, or is it an open map and it's probably not a good idea? Or if you're running a brawler like Brock or Nani, you could ask yourself, is this a close range tank map, or is this an open map where it can be pretty decent? Or if you're running a brawler like Bo or Tara, you can ask yourself, is this a bush map where I can be extremely dominant? Not that Bo is bad. Bo is actually really decent on the meta, but on these bush maps, Bo's the best, hands down. He's just so dominant. And so if you're trying to get it, make it easy on yourself, you could say, oh, look, cavern churn is in rotation. How about I wait to push Bo on cavern churn, where it's going to be a lot easier than if I were to play him anywhere else. But hopefully you guys found this helpful. Yeah, it was kind of fun to just look through some old maps. But yeah, if you like this content, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. And peace.